Can I tell you about a student I had years ago? I think about her a lot, actually.
Yes, I love when you tell stories like this. It always ends up being about all of us somehow.
Well, she had been learning English for almost 12 years. She had certificates, she had passed exams, she had taken courses, she had had private lessons. By any official measure, she was at a high level.
Okay, so she was doing everything right.
She was doing everything she was told. There's a difference. And she came to me because even after 12 years, she still could not have a simple phone call in English without her hands shaking.
Oh, I feel that. I felt exactly that for a long time.
And the first question I asked her was not, "What's your grammar level?" or "Which tenses do you know?" I asked her, "When did you last speak English to a real person about something that actually mattered to you?"
What did she say?
She couldn't remember.
Oh, no.
And that, right there, that was the whole problem. Not her level, not her grammar, not her vocabulary. The problem was what she had been practicing and what she had been avoiding. And today I want to talk about that, about what I've actually learned from hundreds of learners over 8 years about what works and what doesn't, and why the gap between those two things is bigger than most people realize.
I already know this is going to be uncomfortable for me.
Probably, but hopefully also useful.
That's basically the motto of this channel. Before we go further, can I say something?
Of course.
I think a lot of English learners watch videos like this and think, okay, another person telling me what to do, another method, another system. And I understand why people feel tired of that. I felt tired of it too.
That's fair. And I want to be honest about something. I'm not going to give you a system today. I'm not going to give you 7 steps or a 30-day plan. What I want to share is more like patterns, things I've seen over and over across hundreds of different students from dozens of different countries, things that show up again and again on both sides, in the learners who make it and the learners who stay stuck.
And you've seen both.
Many of both. And the difference between them is not intelligence, it's not talent, it's not even time. It's something much more interesting.
Okay, I'll bite. What is it?
We'll get there. But first, if you're new here, welcome. This is Practice English with Adam. We talk like real people about things that actually matter to English learners. No grammar drills, no vocabulary lists, just honest conversation. If that sounds like what you need, subscribe. Stay with us.
And if you've been here a while, thank you. Really, this community is something special.
Okay, let's get into it. So let me start with the thing I see most often, and it's going to sound almost too simple.
Go ahead.
Most learners who are stuck are not lazy. They're actually working very hard. They're watching videos, they're doing exercises, they're reviewing flashcards, they're taking classes. They're busy. They feel productive. And they're barely improving.
That was me for about 3 years. I was so busy learning English that I had no time to actually use it.
And that sentence, busy learning English but no time to use it, is the trap in one line, because learning about a language and using a language are two completely different activities, and one of them builds fluency. The other one mostly builds, confidence in exercises.
Confidence in exercises. Yes, I was excellent at exercises.
And exercises have their place. I'm not saying don't study, but there's a very specific feeling that comes from completing an exercise successfully. It feels like progress. Your brain releases a little reward signal, you close the book feeling good about yourself.
And then someone speaks to you naturally and you fall apart.
Because the exercise never put you under real pressure. There was no time limit, no one was waiting for your answer, you could reread the question, you could check your notes. Real conversation doesn't give you any of that.
It's like training for a race on a treadmill and then discovering the actual race is uphill in the rain with people watching.
That's a perfect description, and I've seen this with so many students. People who can write beautiful emails in English, who can read an article and understand it completely, but who freeze the moment they have to produce something in real time because they've only ever practiced in conditions that didn't actually prepare them for real conditions.
What are real conditions?
Real conditions are someone is looking at you. You have to respond now. You don't know what they're going to say next. There's a relationship involved. You don't want to embarrass yourself. You want to be understood. You want to connect. That's real English. And the only way to get ready for that is to practice that, not something that resembles it.
Not a simulation of it, the real thing.
Exactly. So now let me tell you about the other side, the learners who genuinely improved, because I've seen those too, many of them, and they have patterns in common.
Okay, tell me everything.
The first pattern, they didn't wait until they were ready. They started using English before they felt comfortable, before they felt confident, before they thought they were good enough.
That's terrifying.
It is, and they were scared. I'm not saying they weren't scared, but they did it scared. And every single one of them, without exception, told me some version of the same thing. It was awful at first, and then slowly it wasn't, and now I can't imagine stopping.
I remember the first time I forced myself to speak English in a real situation, outside of a class. I was at a conference and I had to introduce myself to someone I didn't know, and I practiced what I was going to say in my head probably 50 times, and then the moment came and I said something completely different, and it was fine.
And what happened?
He just answered me like a normal person. He didn't notice all the things I got wrong, he just heard what I meant.
That's the second pattern. The best learners discovered early that comprehension is more forgiving than they expected, meaning people understand you even when your English is imperfect. Native speakers fill in the gaps. They meet you halfway. The terror of, what if they don't understand me, is almost always bigger than the reality.
Almost always.
Almost always. There are moments where there's a real breakdown, and those are fine too. You learn from them. You discover what was missing, you fix it, and move on.
So the best learners basically just tolerated discomfort better.
Yes, but not because they're tougher people, because they reframed what discomfort meant. Instead of discomfort means I'm failing, they thought discomfort means I'm at the edge of what I know, which is exactly where learning happens.
The edge of what I know. I like that.
And the third pattern, and this is the one that surprised me most when I started noticing it, the best learners were all almost intensely curious about the language, not about getting it right, about how it works. Why do native speakers say this instead of that? What does this expression actually feel like from the inside? What's the difference in tone between these two phrases?
They treated it like a puzzle.
Exactly, not a test, a puzzle. And that shift from performing to exploring changes everything about how fast you learn. Okay, I want to talk about something that almost never comes up in language teaching, and I think it's actually one of the most important factors.
What is it?
Emotion. Specifically, how you feel about yourself when you speak English.
Oh, we're going deep.
We're going deep because I've noticed something across hundreds of sessions. The learners who struggle the most are not always the ones with the lowest level. Sometimes they're at quite a high level technically, but something happens to them emotionally when they switch into English. They become a different version of themselves.
Can you explain what you mean?
In their own language, they're funny, they're articulate, they're confident, they have opinions, they tell great stories, and then they switch to English and they become small. They speak less, they choose safer words, they retreat into simple sentences because simple sentences feel safer than complex ones.
That is extremely accurate. In my language, I'm actually quite loud and opinionated. In English, I used to become this very polite, very boring version of myself.
The polite, boring version. Yes, I've met her. She shows up in a lot of my sessions.
What do you do with her?
I try to find out what's underneath, because that version, the polite, careful one, is a protection. She's trying to avoid making mistakes that feel personal, that feel like they reveal something about her intelligence or her worth.
Yes, because when you make a grammar mistake in English, it doesn't feel like I made a grammar mistake. It feels like I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough. They can see I don't belong in this conversation.
And that is not a language problem. That is an identity problem. and no grammar exercise is going to fix.
So what does fix it?
Honestly, positive repetition, small wins, situations where you use English and it works, where you say something and you're understood and the world doesn't end. Those experiences build a new story about who you are in English. They slowly replace the old story.
The old story being, I'm not good enough.
Right, and the new story being, I can do this. Maybe not perfectly, but I can do this. And that story, once it takes hold, changes everything. Your posture changes, your vocabulary expands because you stop playing it safe. You take risks. You sound more natural because natural speech is full of risks. It's full of half-finished sentences and corrections and laughter and, wait, that's not what I meant.
Real speech is messy.
Real speech is gloriously messy, and the learners who accept that get there so much faster than the ones still trying to speak in perfect sentences.
Okay, so you've coached hundreds of people. If you had to name one single mistake that holds learners back more than anything else, what would it be?
Without hesitation, perfectionism.
Really? I expected something more technical.
It always surprises people, but perfectionism is, in my experience, the single biggest killer of fluency. More than grammar gaps, more than limited vocabulary, more than accent, perfectionism.
What does perfectionism look like in a learner?
It looks like waiting to speak until you're sure the sentence is right. It looks like choosing a simpler word because you're not certain how to pronounce the more accurate one. It looks like going quiet after a mistake instead of continuing. It looks like going over a conversation in your head afterwards and feeling ashamed of every imperfection.
I did all of those things. All of them.
Most learners do. And here's what perfectionism costs you. It costs you repetitions, and repetitions are the currency of fluency.
Repetitions?
Every time you speak English, every sentence, every conversation, every stumble, your brain is building a pathway. It's getting faster, it's getting more automatic. But if you avoid speaking because you're afraid of being imperfect, you never get those repetitions. You never build the pathway. Your fluency stays locked inside you where no one can see it, including you.
Locked inside, that's such a vivid image, because it does feel like that. Like you know it's in there somewhere, but you can't access it when you need it.
And the irony is the only way to unlock it is to use it imperfectly. The imperfect use is the practice, the mistake is the lesson, the stumble is the repetition. You can't wait until you're fluent to start using it fluently. That's not how brains work.
You have to speak your way to fluency, not study your way there.
That's it. That's the whole thing in one sentence.
Can I write that down?
Please, put it on your wall.
I'll put it next to my plant. She'll appreciate it.
I forgot about the plant.
She listens to English podcasts with me. She's very advanced.
Of course she is.
If you could go back to the very beginning, to your first ever student, what would you say? What do you know now that you didn't know then?
That's a big question.
8 years is a long time. You must have learned things.
Okay, a few things. The first thing, I would tell them that progress in language learning is not linear. It doesn't go in a straight line upward. It goes in bursts. You plateau. Sometimes you feel like you're going backwards. And that's normal. That's the process. But learners who don't know this get discouraged and quit right at the moment before a breakthrough.
Right before the breakthrough. That's painful to think about.
It happens all the time. The plateau is actually a sign that your brain is consolidating. It's building the foundations for the next jump, but it doesn't feel like that from the inside. From the inside, it feels like failure.
What's the second thing?
I would tell them the goal is not to sound like a native speaker. That goal is not only extremely difficult, it's also unnecessary. The goal is to be understood, to connect, to express yourself. And you can do all three of those things long before you sound native. Many learners have postponed their entire speaking life waiting for an accent that was never the point.
That's something I struggled with for a long time. I thought my accent was the problem. I was so embarrassed by it.
And now?
Now, I think it's part of who I am. It's where I come from. Some people actually say they love it.
Of course they do. An accent is personality. An accent is history. The goal was never to erase it.
What's the third thing?
I would say find something in English that you genuinely love, not something you should love, something you actually love. A podcast you look forward to, a YouTuber who makes you laugh, a genre of book that you read in your language and that you start reading in English. Because motivation that comes from genuine pleasure is the only motivation that lasts.
Not discipline?
Discipline runs out. Pleasure doesn't. I've seen learners who relied on discipline alone last about 3 months before burning out, and I've seen learners who found one thing they loved in English and kept going for years because it didn't feel like work anymore.
What was the thing for you when you were learning another language?
Music, actually. I found artists I loved and I became obsessed with understanding every word. And it didn't feel like study, it felt like being a fan.
Being a fan. I love that. That's the best kind of learning.
So if I had to distill everything, 8 years, hundreds of students, all those sessions, all those breakthroughs, all those plateaus into the shortest possible version, what actually works?
Tell me.
Use it before you're ready. Feel the discomfort and speak anyway. Find something you love and let it pull you forward. And stop measuring your progress against perfection. Measure it against where you were last month.
That last one, that's the one I needed.
Most people do.
Because last month, I couldn't have said half the things I just said in this conversation, and I didn't notice that until you said it.
That's what 8 years taught me. The learners who make it are almost never the ones who tried the hardest. They're the ones who kept going when they thought they weren't moving. They're the ones who spoke when they were scared. They're the ones who laughed at their own mistakes instead of hiding from them.
They kept going.
They kept going. Okay, before we finish, one challenge. This week, I want you to do one thing in English that scares you a little, not a lot, just a little. Send a voice message to someone in English, start a conversation, record yourself talking for 60 seconds, comment on a video in English with a real thought, not just a smiley face.
One thing, slightly scary.
One thing, slightly scary. And when it's over, notice what happened. Notice that you survived. Notice what you got right. Because your brain needs those moments. It needs evidence that English is safe, that you're capable, that it's worth continuing.
Come back and tell us in the comments. Seriously, write what you did. We read them.
We really do. And if this episode gave you something, if even one thing landed, share it. That's how other learners find us. And every learner who finds this community is one more person who doesn't have to figure this out alone.
That matters a lot. More than you know.
Subscribe if you haven't. Come back next week. And in the meantime, keep going. Even on the days when it doesn't feel like it's working. Especially on those days.
Especially on those days.
The learners I'm most proud of are not the ones who were naturally gifted. They're the ones who were brave enough to be bad at it and kept going anyway.
They kept going.
They kept going.